Time-weighted return, TWR, is like a romantic movie. Both paint an unrealistic picture of the real world. Even though the fund portfolio might achieve this advertised return, you probably won't. Have you ever looked at an advertisement for a mutual fund that screams 10% annual return and thought, wow, I'll be getting 10% per year on all of the money I put into this fund? I did too, but that's not the case. According to Jack Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, the fund's advertised return is usually 3% higher than what the typical mutual fund investor actually earns. If a fund advertises 10%, you will basically only get 7%. If we have $100 in the fund at the beginning of the year and we end up with $120 at the end of the year, we're up 20%, and that's the number you will see advertised. However, very few people will have all of their money invested on day one. Usually we make contributions every paycheck. You can think of TWR as your rate of return if you do not make deposits or withdrawals from your initial investment. In other words, TWR measures how well an investment performs disregarding any cash flows. Let's say you invest $50 on January 1st, 2023, and the fund shoots up 100% in 6 months. Your investment is now worth $100. On July 1st, 2023, you decide to contribute another $100 into the fund for a total account value of $200. However, the second half of the year was rough and the fund dropped 50%, cutting your $200 in half. In short, the $150 that you put in is now only worth $100. What do you think the fund's advertised rate of return would be for this year? Well, let's see. You lost money, so the rate of return is probably a negative percentage, right? Wrong. The advertised return is, drumroll please, 0%. You lost money, but the fund had a return of 0%. Call the cops, you've been robbed. How did this happen? Let's first break down what TWR really is. The time-weighted return calculates the compounded rate of return for multiple sub-periods. Whenever cash comes into or out of the fund, a new sub-period begins. Then, you multiply the returns for each sub-period together to get the TWR. In other words, you can think of these sub-periods like school semesters. Just as you get a new grade each semester and combining them will give you your overall GPA, the investment gets a new rate of return for each sub-period, and together these rates will form the annual rate of return. To calculate the time-weighted return, you must first break up the time period into sub-periods. Anytime cash flows in or out of the fund, you have to break it up into a new sub-period. Next, you will need to find out the rate of return for each sub-period using this formula. HP equals to M value minus start value plus cash flow, all divided by start value plus cash flow. Finally, you will use this formula to calculate the time-weighted return. TWR equals to 1 plus HP of 1 times 1 plus HP of 2, and you keep doing that for as many holding periods as you have, and you subtract the end result by 1. Where HP is the rate of return for a given sub-period or holding period, N is the number of sub-periods. For our previous example, we have two sub-periods, the first and second half of the year. In the first sub-period, January 1st to June 30th, we started with $50 and ended up with $100. What's the rate of return for this sub-period? Based on this calculation, and we plug the numbers in, we get a holding period return of 100%. For the second sub-period, July 1st to December 31st, we started with $100, put in an additional $100, and ended up with $100. What's the rate of return for this sub-period? Well, based on the formula, it's minus 50%. Finally, to calculate the TWR for this whole year, we use the last formula for TWR. And if you plug the numbers in, you'll find that the whole TWR equals to 0%. Do you understand how the financial world lies to you now? Just because your fund returned 0% for the year does not mean you did not gain or lose money. Keep in mind what your actual gain or losses will depend on several factors, such as how much better or worse the rate of return in the first half of the year was compared to the rate of return in the second half of the year. Additionally, how much we chase performance also plays a role. When we chase performance, such as contributing more when the fund is doing well and less when it's not doing well, we'll get a very different return. In short, this example shows that you do not get the advertised rate of return, also known as the time-weighted return. That's the portfolio's rate of return in an ideal scenario, not your rate of return. The main problem is very few people will have all of their money invested on day one, so you can't be tricked into thinking that the advertised TWR is what you would have actually received in your account. Often people make periodic contributions. If you want to know how much you really made or lost in the real world, this next video will show you how to figure out your dollar-weighted returns. Dollar-weighted returns are what you actually get in your account based on your own personal situation, deposits, and withdrawals.